Have you been trying to find or flip profitable cars but aren't sure what to look for when inspecting a car in person? Well, by the end of this video, you'll have a bunch of useful tools that will ensure you won't miss a thing and know exactly what to look for when inspecting a used car. Better still, that'll help you achieve that profitable outcome. For more on every step of the car flipping process, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next weekly video. My name is Benjamin McShannock and this is Ben Flips Cars. Here are some general tips when inspecting a used car. If you're flipping cars like me, just bear in mind that 9 out of 10 times you're going to be walking away. As a rule of thumb, don't buy a car unless you're confident that you can make it look like new within your skill level. For example, with this Ford Territory here, you can see the faded lights are something you would definitely look for, as it's fairly easy to fix and make it look like new again. But then on the other hand, it has lots of peeling paint and other cosmetic eyesores that would be difficult to fix, and usually I wouldn't buy a car like this because it would be a little bit beyond my skill set. But this car was basically given to me for free, so hence why I'm giving it a go. If it becomes apparent there's just too much wrong with the car as you're inspecting it, then just walk away. Repair costs add up way too quickly, especially if you have to take it to the mechanic. If something shows up on the car that you're unsure of, like you can hear the car making a funny noise as it's driving but you're not quite sure what it is, then just assume the worst and walk away. If the car doesn't have a roadworthy certificate, then it's up to you whether you want to take that risk or not. You can certainly get the car cheaper without a roadworthy certificate, but oftentimes sellers won't be providing one because there's some kind of major issue with the car that they don't want to fix, and they're probably not going to disclose that issue to you. You can of course get a pre-purchase inspection, but that does of course cost money if you want to get that done to make sure that the car's going to be roadworthy without the roadworthy certificate. As you're inspecting the car, you want to have a piece of paper and a pen and list down every single little thing you find wrong with the car. If there's a lot of little things wrong, it can add up in cost, but it can allow for greater negotiation with the seller if there's lots of little things wrong. Fixing one big thing is often easier than fixing a ton of little things. Once you've got your list after you've completed the inspection, just looking at it, you should pretty much be able to tell straight away if the car's going to be too much of a hassle or not. If not, then quickly estimate how much each of the things on the list you think will cost, and then subtract that total from the profit margin that you estimated in the previous video, which I'll put up in the cards on the left here. Moreover, you should add an extra $500 for a bit of wiggle room and to make sure that that profit margin is even more achievable. If you're still quite profitable with those costs deducted and that 500, then the car absolutely has some good profit potential. Now, for every car you're going to inspect, you're going to want to bring along what I call the car inspection kit. This includes, first of all, an OBD scanner. You use this to scan the car's computer, and it'll tell you any error codes that it may have that sometimes don't show up on the dash. You can buy this from your local auto store or Bunnings warehouse, or even online, and they should cost about $20 to $50. You're also going to want to bring a nice little powerful torch. This is going to allow you to see underneath the car better, look for any leaks, any rust spots, anything like that, and also shine inside the darker spots in the engine bay and get more light inside the fluid reservoirs so you can see the condition of the fluids in the car better. Next thing is a fridge magnet. If you suspect that there's been some body work done and some body fillers being used to fill in a spot on the car, you can put the fridge magnet on, and if it falls off, then obviously body filler has been put in. If it doesn't, then it's the original metal of the panel and there's no worries. Bear in mind, plastic and aluminium do not magnetize anyway. Next, you just want some disposable gloves just to keep your hands clean and safe when you're inspecting, particularly in the engine bay and other parts of the car, especially underneath as well. You don't want to get those engine fluids on your hands. Another thing you want is some straws. Unfortunately, I only have some paper ones here. It would be better if you could get some clear see-through plastic ones. And you want to use that for inspecting all the fluids. You can draw some fluid out with the straw simply by putting your finger over the end of the straw once it's in the fluid. You can inspect that fluid in a clear straw, or you can just spill it out onto a paper towel or onto a gloved hand to get a better look at the condition of the fluid. Another thing you want is a little inspection mirror. You can seriously get these for like $5 at Bunnings warehouse. That's where I got this one, or you can find them online for less than $20 usually. The last thing you want is a water bottle or spray bottle with just some plain old water in it, and you can spray this onto certain scratches to see if they disappear with the water, then you know they're really shallow, and just some polish or a tiny bit of sanding is going to fix those scratches. If they don't go away with the water, you know they're a bit deeper, they'll probably need a lot more sanding, possibly some clear coat, and maybe even some paint. Now, before you even start the inspection, you want to do your basic due diligence. So research the year, model, make, badge and variant of the car, the color inside and outside, how many kilometers are on the odometer. That's an important one. You also want to remember the asking price you saw on the ad, and more importantly, what you are willing to pay for the car, your absolute maximum that you're willing to pay. Once again, refer to that previous video to figure out how much you're going to be willing to pay when you come and inspect a car. You should always check if the car is rear wheel, front wheel, four wheel, or all-wheel drive. Make sure you know that. When the owner gives you the keys, you want to ask how many keys there is, if there's any spares, if there is a fob that comes with it, and if the fob actually works. When you're checking the keys, you can even check, does the car actually lock and unlock? Check every door, the boot, every part of the car that should lock and unlock. Ask the owner if the car's been serviced regularly. Does it have a service history? If it has the service book all filled out, that is perfect, that's ideal, you'll be able to sell the car for a lot more. If not, does it have a sticker on the windshield? Some cars won't, but if it does, you can call the number on that sticker and they may have a service history of the car if the car was regularly taken to that service provider to have service done. Check and make sure all the VINs match, behind the windshield, on the engine, in the door jamb of the driver's door. If not, it could suggest the car has been stolen. Make sure the seller's driver's license has the name that's registered to the car. Make sure they can actually sell you the car. Online, you can plug in the license plate, which this car doesn't have one, to do a free VicRoads Rego check. And with that, you can see how much rego is left and who the car is actually registered to. It'll say the name. Also, absolutely do what's called a PPSR check. I can't remember what the full elongated word is for it, but it only costs $2. You can do it on the government website. It reports details like if the car was stolen, if it's still under finance, if it's ever been reported as a write-off. You can also double check the details that you already have, like the model year. Make sure you haven't been lied to about the model year, the color, the rego, make and model, etc. I believe the PPSR check also shows if there's ever been a model recall. Don't quote me on that though. If the car has been reported as a write-off at any point, just walk away. Don't want to deal with that. That massively takes away from the car's value, even if the car is in perfect working order. However, you should bear in mind, even if the PPSR check has no recorded instances of crashes or write-offs, then your investigation may still show signs of a crash on the car. The owner may have fixed the car themselves so that they didn't have to report it to the insurance and save themselves some money. Ask what kind of driving the car was used for by the owner. Was it majority highway, just long highway drives? Was it for city driving, start and stop? Where was the car kept? Was it garage kept? Was it kept on a street? Was it kept down by the beach where the rust might affect it? Things like that. Was it driven by a P-plater? Was it hooned by a P-plater? If the car is showing signs of being in a major impact, I really wouldn't buy the car without a roadworthy certificate or at least a pre-purchase inspection. After a major collision, the car might have major issues that it's better that you get a professional to have a look for. The final part of our due diligence is to OBD scan the car. We want to do this as the first thing as the inspection, because if there's too many issues that show up on this, then we don't even want to bother inspecting the rest of the car. To do this, you want to start up the car, have it running. Then you want to find the OBD scan port, which is usually here by the steering wheel somewhere. You can see it's just here on this car. Here we go, get our plug it straight into there. Make sure it's nice and snug. And then our OBD scan tool will power up. We want to go diagnose, press OK when we get this screen, and then press read codes. This vehicle surprisingly has no fault codes. That's beautiful because this car has 230,000 kilometers, so it's obviously been somewhat well kept. Now, an important code I'm just going to mention now is that if a P1000 code pops up, that means that either a check engine light or an error code has been deleted. Ask the owner about it, see if there's some sort of previous issue with the car that they would have had to get the code deleted for once the issue is fixed. If they act like they don't know what that was about, then walk the hell away. Who knows what else they are hiding. Is there an inspection point I've mentioned so far that you didn't think of and you know you would have overlooked? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you're unsure of where to find cars with profit potential in the first place, as I mentioned earlier, the previous video I made shows the online tools I used to find cars with profit potential. It's up here in the corner, or link is in the description. Go and watch it after you've finished watching this video. Now, what you've all been waiting for, let's start the interior inspection on this Green Frog Ford Territory, as the previous owner called it. Don't forget to bring your pen and paper, and we're going to make a list of all the issues as we go. Feel free to shake parts of the car as you're moving around just to make sure they're all on and sturdy. If the car is extremely dirty and obviously poorly looked after, then it's probably poorly looked after mechanically as well. So you want to pay particular attention to the mechanics when you test drive the car. Now, check every single panel one by one. You just want to look for scratches, dents, paint fade, rust. Any major dent you find, you want to check behind for if there's rust. Obviously there's already rust in the front of this one. We can't actually see behind it here in this case. Be particularly aware of rust in damaged areas. You can paint over it, but you want to remove the rust first, and this can come with varying degrees of difficulty. This seems mostly like surface rust, so just some sanding would probably get rid of the rust, and then you can use some rust inhibiting paint to go over the top if you want. Stone chips on the bonnet are a classic place for rust to occur. You can see in this little one there doesn't seem to really be any rust. In fact, in general, this car, surprisingly, after 230,000 Ks, doesn't seem to have many stone chips at all. You want to check panel gaps on every part of the car, run your finger down the seam, make sure it's even and symmetrical. You want to do this with every panel and seam on the car, because if there's any asymmetries or any unevenness, especially around the doors, if the doors are having trouble opening and closing, no worries there, then that can suggest that the car at some point was in some sort of major impact that has bent the frame a little bit out of shape. Also, run your finger along where the windshield meets the body. You want to make sure there's no leaks around that area, and you also want to make sure that there's no chips or cracks in the windscreen, as these are extremely expensive to repair, especially if the window cracks. Also, when you're investigating the windows, you want to see if the tint inside is starting to peel. You can see on this car it is, and with that you can decide if you want to peel the tint off, which is relatively easy to do, or you can just leave it there for the next owner to decide for themselves. Now, are the headlights faded on this car? Yes, they very much are, but this is very easy to fix, and it's also a good way to negotiate down the price. So faded headlights are what you should look for every car flip you do, or even if you're buying a used car, don't be afraid of faded headlights. What you should be far more afraid of is if there is any moisture inside the head or tail lights. It doesn't appear that that's the case in these headlights. Let's check the tail lights. The tail lights also don't seem to have any condensation, any fog, mist, water droplets inside them, which is perfect. That's what we want to see. Fixing a leak or getting a new headlight housing can be a pain and expensive. We also want to ensure the head and tail lights are firmly in place, so let's do this by opening the bonnet and the boot. And whilst we're opening the bonnet, we want to see if the struts keep the bonnet up, which in this case they do not. But that's fine, because these hydraulic struts are actually relatively cheap and extremely easy to replace. That's another thing you can use to negotiate down the price and fix easily. Now, before the boot comes slamming down on me, give the headlight housing a quick shake. And beautiful, these headlights are in place, and our auto closing hood has done the job there for us. Same thing with the boot, up we go. And in this case, the struts actually do bring up the boot and hold it in place, so no worries there. Shake the headlight housing, or taillight housing, sorry. And these are firmly in place. This has a tiny bit of play in it, but that's no problem at all. Whilst we're on the topic of head and tail lights, we want to check that all the functions work, so you just have to turn the key over. I'm going to turn the engine on, just because then I'll get some cool air in what's becoming quickly a hot day. So you want to check all your lighting functions, high beams, etc., indicators, brake lights by pressing the brake pedal. Make sure every single function works. Don't forget your hazards as well. And also, don't forget your fog lights if your car has them. Don't forget your side indicator lights as well if your car includes them. Sometimes they're also on the door mirrors. If any of the head or tail or indicator light functions on your car aren't working, don't worry. The globes are extremely easy and cheap to replace, but they're also another thing that you can use to negotiate down with the seller However, most people do know how to replace bulbs themselves and know how extremely easy and cheap it is, so you might not be able to use as much negotiation leverage with this particular issue. Also, one that a lot of people forget is make sure your number plate lights are working. You can see those are working no problem. These are a roadworthy issue, so definitely make sure they're working, as are indicators, brake lights, and the rest of these lights. Next, let's check our mirrors. Do they work as they should? Do they fold in and out? No problem. That one's fine. Check the other one as well. And more importantly, if your car has electric mirrors, we want to see if they work. In this case, unfortunately, this is all like loose, and they definitely don't work at all on either side. So that is something we have to bear in mind. However, we can probably move them with our hand if we really wanted to anyway. We also want to check if the windscreen wipers are working. So let's squeeze, see if their water function is working. Yes, the water is spraying and the wipers are wiping. Beautiful. Inspect your wiper blades whilst you're at it. If your wiper blades are making a whole lot of noise and not clearing the water that well, then your wiper blades likely need to be replaced. If your car has automatic windscreen wipers that come on when it's raining, try and find the sensor and wet the sensor and see if the automatic wipers come on. Something a lot of people look over is with your doors. Make sure, well, for one, that the handle was working just fine. No worries on that one. Then you want to make sure your door has its 1, 2, and 3 hold spot. Unfortunately, I can't quite test it here because I don't have enough clearance, but make sure it has that 1, 2, 3 and that they stay in place and that they don't just swing shut on you when you're trying to hold one open. Also, check for dents on the edges of your doors, as these can kind of rust. Surprisingly, there's hardly anything on this car with 230,000 Ks. Also, whilst your door is open, check your door seals. Are they really cracked and rusted and dried out? And especially at the top, you want to pay attention to, because that's where the rain's going to get in if they're in bad condition. These actually seem to be fine and they're not stuck on in any funny ways where it looks like someone's tried to makeshift fix them, so no problems there. If the car has a sunroof, this is also a good time to check on that. Make sure there's no leaks in the seals and that the seals are good. No sunroof on this particular car. In general, also don't forget to have a look at the roof of your car. You can do this by opening one of the doors, stepping onto the door sill here and stepping up. You can see on this car lots of peeling clear coat and paint up on the roof. Another thing people overlook, because you so rarely use your fuel cap, only when you're filling up of course, is to check if that's working. On this particular car, this looks like it's one where you have to open from the interior, or it's jammed shut. I hope it's not that though. No, here we go. Here's the button and you can hear it pop open. Fuel door is open. Let's make sure the cap comes off as well nicely. Beautiful. And you want to make sure it has a cap, because if not, the fumes are going to really start to stink and your car will probably smell like petrol when running, or even when it's not running possibly. But that's an easy solution if your car does smell like petrol and it's missing the fuel cap. Next thing you want to come and look at is the wheels. Once you've looked at the rest of the car, how are the condition? As you can see, these ones are a little bit rusty, but with a good clean, I reckon they wouldn't be too bad. If they have lots of curb rash, then that's can be fixed, but it is a timely and rather expensive process. You want to ensure the nuts aren't stripped or rusted that are holding on the wheel. In this case, we actually have a wheel cover, so we can't see them, but if we come up to this wheel, which doesn't have the cover, these nuts are all in good condition, no rust, definitely not stripped, and they would probably come off rather easily. If not, just squirt them with some WD-40. Whilst looking at the wheels, pay attention to the tires. This is critical. If your tires have a lot of good tread left on them, then they're going to pass a roadworthy no issue and save you at least $500 to $600. This tire has a ton of tread because it's a spare tire, the previous owner was telling me, but these other tires, whilst they still have a little bit of tread on them, they do look pretty worn out. You can see them cracking here, and they're a lot less tread on them than that other spare one, so these could possibly be an issue. This can also be a good time to turn the car on briefly and turn the wheels lock to lock. See how the steering wheel moves and the steering, make sure it's okay. And whilst the wheel is turned, we can have a better look at the tires, see if the wear on them is even. If not, it suggests that the wheels might be out of alignment, but this looks pretty even and good. Go over to the other side, And once again, this is the spare, so this has really good tread on it and looks like even wear as well. You can also turn the wheel back the other way and look at the front end of this tyre and the back end of the tyre on the other side. When steering the steering wheel, make sure that it's smooth and predictable and tight, and it shouldn't be making any noise as you steer the steering wheel lock to lock either side. If you suspect your car does have unaligned wheels, just come and have a look down the side of the car like this. Have a look front to back, see how the wheels are. If they look like, with the steering wheel pointed straight, that they're not straight, then you likely are out of alignment. And the alignment's very obvious if you can visually see it. This looks okay in this case. You also want to check for any cracks or bulges in the tyres. On these older tyres, they are starting to crack a little, but really this is pretty minor, no problem. Any bulges where it's like a big balloon sticking out of any point on the tyre, that's bad as well. Your tyre could blow up. And it probably means the tyre needs to be replaced. You can also feel around the back of the tyre for if there's any cracks or bulges. Just be careful, your hands are going to get dirty doing that, so put on your gloves before doing that. Also give the wheel a good shake, really good. Make sure it's firm and in place all right. Do that for every wheel. If it moves around a lot, there could be a problem with the fitment of the wheel, the nuts, the suspension. It could be a range of things. Now let's have a look at the brakes and brake rotors. You can see these brakes are nice and silver. If they're rusted or majorly grooved in any way, these feel nice and smooth to touch, so no major grooves, no rust visually. You also want to check the caliper, which is here. Check for any rust on that. Looks like it has some basic surface rust and dirt. You also want to check for any fluids, because that could be a leak in your brake line and mainly rust. Also, if you can somehow get a bit of a view of how much life the brakes have left in them, which in this case we can't really see anything, but sometimes you can see if the brake pad has a good bit of thickness left in it. That's also going to save you some money, even though brake pads aren't that difficult to replace. You want to have a look at the suspension if you can see it. Unfortunately on this car you really can't see it that well. However, when you're test driving it, you'll be able to get a feel for how the suspension is. Also have a general look in the wheel arch. How does it look? It's probably going to be dirty, no doubt about that, but is there rust? Is there any major damage? Is there any of the other things I pointed out earlier in the video? This wheel arch looks okay, it just looks dirty. For the suspension, you can perform what's called the bounce test. You don't need a mitt to do it, you can do it just with your hands, but it's really hot in the sun now, so just give it a good push. And as you can see, this car has nice sturdy suspension. If it majorly bounces up and down, then it's a problem. If it just does one movement like that, then it should be okay. And do the same for the rear end as well. Also search up some pictures of what a stock version of the car looks like, so a stock Ford Territory in this case, and figure out if the suspension has been lifted or lowered. I'm pretty sure on this car that it is stock, but if it has been lifted or lowered, have a close look at the suspension and how it's been done, because if it's been done incorrectly, it could damage the suspension. Finally, we want to look underneath the car. First, let's look under the front. What we want to look for is any leaks. You can see some water under there or some fluid of some sort. That could just be from the air conditioner. If it's a clear watery fluid, then that's what it is, and that's what it looks like from here, but I can't really tell. Any black fluids or green or red fluids or any fluids of particular color are the ones you want to worry about. Or if the car's just dripping when it's sitting still, that's no good. You also want to look at the undercarriage for any major rust, any signs that the undercarriage is bent from a major impact. Obviously it'll be dirty, but surprisingly for a car of this age and this kilometers, this undercarriage looks quite good. We do have a little bit of a leak here that's coming from somewhere under here. I have no idea what it is. I'm assuming it's just because there's been a lot of rain the last few days, but it could also be a brake fluid leak, so we'll have to bear that in mind, because I think brake lines might run back here somewhere. It's very unusual to have a leak coming out of the rear end of the car. It could be coming from the exhaust, but the exhaust is on the other side, so it's not that. With any rust under the car or on the car in general, if it falls off when you touch it, walk away. There's going to be more rust under the car and in places that you can't see that is going to cause huge headaches somewhere down the track. If it's just surface rust, it's okay, it can be fixed and it won't cause you any issues. You also want to check under the car after test driving it again. Once all the fluids have been running through the car, once the car running, then there might be some leaks that become apparent under the car. A little bit of moisture under certain parts of the car is okay. You just don't want constant drips. That's what you should be worried about. You also want to check for rust or leaks around the exhaust pipe. And you can even if the car's cool, run your finger inside of the exhaust pipe, ideally with a gloved hand on like me. That's very black and disgusting, and it's probably not good that it's that black. But this car is old, so you would kind of expect that. But if you have any oil, or if your exhaust smells like petrol, then you could have a bad engine or need a valve job, which is not cheap or easy. Once again, if you're unsure of where to find a used car with profit potential in the first place, then have a look at this previous video. It'll also be down in the description and should be up on the screen now. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to get back to you. Please like the video for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to know when the next car flipping video is out. Stay tuned for part 2 of performing a used car inspection. I'm Benjamin McShannock and thank you for watching Ben Flips Cars.